Welcome to Rewatch or Return, the podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? We are going to, this time around, look at National Treasure, the Nicolas Cage Disney team-up. Let's jump right into the Rotten Tomatoes plot synopsis. Historian and codebreaker Ben Gates, played by Nicolas Cage, has been searching his whole life for a rumored treasure dating back to the creation of the United States. Joining an expedition led by fellow treasure hunter Ian Howe, played by Sean Bean, Gates finds an ice-locked colonial ship in the Arctic Circle that contains a clue linking the treasure to the Declaration of Independence. But when Howe betrays him, Gates has to race to get the document ahead of his so-called colleague. All right. Let's jump right into now Fast Forward Facts. Fast Forward Facts is where we take a quick narrative rundown of the history and facts behind the film. Let's rewind back to 2004 when Disney asked a wild question: what if American history was one giant treasure map? The result was National Treasure, a fast-paced adventure that turned historical landmarks into puzzle pieces, and made stealing the Declaration of Independence feel like a completely reasonable plan. The film stars Nicolas Cage as Benjamin Franklin Gates, a historian and treasure hunter obsessed with proving his family's legacy is real. His mission? Track down a legendary treasure hidden by the Founding Fathers using clues scattered across American history. Backing him up is a great supporting cast, including Jon Voight as his father, Harvey Keitel as the FBI agent Sandusky, Diane Kruger as archivist Abigail Chase, Justin Bartha as tech-savvy sidekick Riley Poole, and Sean Bean as rival treasure hunter Ian Howe, who, for once, doesn't die on screen. Directed by John Turteltaub and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, the film blended action, mystery, and real-world locations like the National Archives building and Independence Hall, though most interiors were recreated on sound stages for security reasons. And yes, that iconic "I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence" line, it wasn't just marketing gold, it became one of the most memorable movie quotes of the 2000s. Behind the scenes, the filmmakers worked with historians to ground the puzzles in real symbols, including Freemason imagery, invisible ink, and colonial-era ciphers. While the treasure itself is fictional, many of the clues are loosely inspired by real historical theories and myths. The production also built a full-scale replica of the Declaration of Independence for filming, along with elaborate hidden compartments and prop versions that could be folded, scanned, and even aged on screen. Made for about $100 million, National Treasure pulled in over $347 million worldwide, proving that audiences were more than ready for a modern-day Indiana Jones-style adventure, just with more American history and fewer snakes. The movie's success led to a sequel, National Treasure Book of Secrets, in 2007, and later expanded into a Disney Plus series, cementing the franchise as a fan-favorite blend of history, action, and puzzle-solving fun. Today, National Treasure is remembered as one of those endlessly rewatchable movies, the kind you throw on and immediately get pulled into, secret maps, hidden codes, and Nicolas Cage sprinting through museums, because sometimes the greatest treasure isn't gold, it's realizing the clues were right in front of you the whole time. All right, with that down, we're going to jump right into what the critics said. This is where we look at the first top 10 top critics reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. On the tomato meter, we have a 47% by the critics, and on the popcorn meter with the audience, we have a 76%. Now, let's jump right into what they had to say. Matthew Rosa from Salon.com says it is a definitely guilty pleasure, and 90% of the reason why can be summed up in two words: Nicolas Cage. Namrata Joshi from Outlook says, I'm laughing because I'm not sure if I said that correctly. There might be too many inaccuracies in the plot. The mix of the past and the present is naive and at times downright silly, but makes for fun viewing if you don't put your thinking caps on. The film has enough to keep you involved, she says. Nell Minnow from Common Sense Media says historical adventure is a fun romp for tweens and up. Trevor Johnston from Time Out says a mild holiday caper for the wettest of afternoons. Stella Papamichael from BBC.com says this movie couldn't be more stale if it had been dug up by archaeologists. Stephen D. Graydanis from Decent Films says works fairly well as slick, enjoyable hooey. Its in general approach, if not all particulars. This could represent a promising new approach in family entertainment. Okay. I feel like I read that somewhere wrongly, but I'm not real sure. Ed Park from Village Voice says National Treasure gets more entertaining as the preposterousness rises. Richard Roper, who did not like this at all, says so bad on so many levels. Mark Savlov from the Austin Chronicle says an underdone pistache of Raiders of the Lost Ark and a really tedious high school history class. Then Lisa Schwartzbaum from Entertainment Weekly says Cage, ? Movie star as social studies teacher. Okay, well, moving right along with from what they had to say on to first time or 50th. And let's just talk about whether or not this is a first time watch or if this is a essentially 50th time watch. And how did that influence things? Well, for me, this is far from a first time watch. This movie is something I was obsessed with. I think this movie has a lot to do with the, like, not that I didn't enjoy it already or didn't have an interest already, but, and I don't care, we'll get into this in a little bit. I don't really care how inaccurate anybody, like, complains that this is or whatever. This movie, the fun of it, trying to pull you into history with things. This movie, I think, ignited some sort of additional or put some kind of turbo boost on my interest in American history, in particular, like early American history, founding era history of this country, the United States, that is. And I was obsessed. I think I was already a big Indiana Jones fan. I was already a big fan of like all the swashbuckler type movies, and this had that like mix of historical interest and then the swashbuckling adventure nature of things. I love the big, I don't want to get too much into it now, but I love big movie sets that are just really, really detailed. And we'll talk more about this here in a little while when we get into the other stuff. But I've seen this movie so many times. I don't really even remember the first time I watched it in the movie theater, but I know I saw it in the movie theater. I would have been a junior in high school, I think, when this came out. I remember watching it. I remember loving it. I remember buying it, and I remember watching it several times after buying it. I may have seen it more than once in the theater, but I took it. I can remember taking a trip with my class somewhere and being on the bus, and at the time, I had a kind of portable DVD player thingy, and I remember taking it with me on that trip and watching it on the portable DVD player on the bus on our trip. I watched it there. I think I watched it on the way back. I watched all the special features. I listened through all of the DVD commentary stuff. I just totally nerded out on this movie when it came out. Really, really, really enjoyed it. I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched it. I would say even since 2004, the number could definitely push 50. But it's far from a first-time watch for me, and my interest and the way that I feel about the movie probably has to do with how many times that I have seen this movie over the years. Moving on to be continued, would a sequel work for this film? And if there's a sequel, should there have been? My answer that I wrote here is yes and yes. Would a sequel work for this film? I think, yeah, there was a sequel made, and it was good enough. It should have been made. I don't think the sequel was anywhere near as good as the first one, but it was still an entertaining film. And should it have been made? Yes. I mean, I think I'd have to look at what they made off of it. I'm sure that they made a profit off of it. They were able to kind of dig into some more aspects of American history and then European history and some different things that travel outside of the U.S. They traveled over to England. They, added some more stuff, got into native history and all that. But the second one was good enough that I'm probably going to watch it now that I've watched this one. It kind of makes me want to sit down and watch the second one. I don't know that I'll do an episode over the second one, at least not right away, but it does. Watching the first one makes me want to watch the second one, and then my thoughts on the second one, it is like, yes, I'm glad it exists, and then obviously they didn't have I wouldn't call it like a direct sequel in that it was, taking the same characters and pulling them in to the story and doing a whole story with the original characters. However, they did make a TV show on Disney Plus that was. If you can hear a whining cat in the background, by the way, it's mine, and he's in the other room, and he's upset because I'm not letting him in here. So you might hear a whining cat in the background. That is nothing to be concerned about. We're not hearing things. It exists. He'll be okay. But yeah, they did the Disney Plus series, and it was like, okay, I think like the first episode, Justin Bartha came in as Riley Poole, and whatever, it was kind of like the same way that if you watch the show Limitless, which was based on the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper was in that movie, or in this TV series, like in the very first episode, and then kind of like handed it off. It was just like their little nod to that. And it was the same way with this. I think like Riley, I don't know if he was in the first episode. There was some episode where Riley showed up in the series, but the series was not people that were involved in any of the stuff in the movies. But he did kind of present himself in that at one point at like an airport for a minute, being asked a couple questions, and that was their way to kind of be like, hey, like a nod to the movies of being like, this is still in that world, even though none of these people were in any of that, and the story has nothing to do with them. But the first one, I guess, was popular enough that they made a second one, and I'm sure that they made money off of both of them, and those became popular enough, I guess, over the years that Disney decided, yes, we need to make a Disney Plus series. The series was okay, but I think it could have been better. I would much rather see, Nicolas Cage and the original crew come back and do something, even though I'm not really sure what they could do at this point, and I would hate for them to make a movie now that is just for the sake of making the movie. Like, if you don't have a story to tell, definitely don't make a movie. And I don't think they probably have a story to tell, even though we're in the era of everybody wanting to make a sequel to like classic popular movies. And I don't think that they should do that with this, even if like everybody gets back on board, because I just don't think that they could come up with a story that doesn't feel like you're really forcing everything. So what exists, I'm fine with it existing. As far as sequel stuff goes and continuations of things, but I don't think they should continue anymore unless they wanted to do some kind of like cartoon series. Now that's a whole other deal, because you can branch out on the cartoon side of things in a way that everybody accepts a little more. Like, the Back to the Future cartoon stuff. If you think about like Ghostbusters or Beetlejuice, or like any of those shows that went ahead and said like, oh, we're going to do a cartoon series. Like, I think you could do a very interesting sort of semi-educational cartoon series based on like the original characters. It might be interesting. You could find people to do impressions of these guys, especially Nicolas Cage, because there's several of those out there, and there's one in particular that's quite funny that I catch on a regular basis on I think it's Instagram. But anyway, yes, I'm glad that the sequel movie exists, and I think it should. And I'm okay with the TV series existing. I kind of need to go back and watch it. I may go back and do all of this. Watch the second one and watch the series. We may actually talk about that. We may get into the area of starting to get the negative sides of the return side of the rewatch or return we may get with some of those. I don't know. I'm rambling about to be continued, so we're going to move on now from to be continued. But before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials to camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start growing some of your own food, they've got you covered for all of it. And the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code REWATCH to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll be helping out the show as they give us a small reward for your business in the process. Head to PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. That's PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. Or simply enter the code REWATCH at checkout and get prepared today. All right, let's now jump into a recap of the film and kind of go over the basics of what it's all about for those who obviously have already seen it and don't need me to do so. But that's kind of what we do on here. So it starts out with the young Ben Gates in the attic of his grandfather's house, and he stumbles across some stuff, and his grandpa's like, "What are you doing up here?" And he tells him he was looking around, and he's looking at some stuff that has to do with some knights or something, but he kind of ends up asking him, like, does he want to know the story behind some things or something that he was looking at? And he tells him the story about Charles Carroll and how he had this secret about this treasure. And right before he died, he told somebody the secret lies with Charlotte. He was going to the White House to tell the president at the time, but the president wasn't there. But he tells his assistant guy or some young man who was with him, the secret lies with Charlotte. And so he tells him about Charlotte. The secret lies with Charlotte, and they don't know what it means, and yada, yada. Well, after all that, and after quickly finding out that John Voight, his father, is upset that he's talking to that his dad's talking to his son about the treasure stuff, because he's like, "Hey, I got tired of all this treasure stuff, and I don't want to hear anything about it anymore." It's a family thing, a family business, a family interest. They're all treasure hunters, and they want to search for this treasure. Well, the next scene after he's a young man and all this stuff is explained to him, the secret lies with Charlotte and all that, the next scene is out in the middle of a snowy, icy nowhere, and they are on a expedition to find a particular thing. Nicolas Cage as a grown-up Ben Gates, and his assistant Riley, and Sean Bean, who plays Ian Howe, the bad guy, if you will. So they end up finding out that the secret is, as far as the secret lies with Charlotte. Charlotte is a ship. They find the ship named Charlotte. On the ship, they find a pipe. But on the ship also, as they find this pipe, they realize that they find a clue on this pipe, and it tells them that there's another clue basically on the back of the Declaration of Independence, or something to do with the Declaration of Independence. Ian starts talking about how he wants to steal it, because that's the only way that they're going to be able to look at it. And now Ben he kind of turns on Ben. He tries to kill him. They hide in the smuggler's hold and end up surviving this explosion. Ian gets away. He thinks that Ben is dead. And now Ben and Riley go back, and they are on a mission now that they have realized that the continuation of the next clue or whatever is on the Declaration of Independence. And so now they're on mission to figure out, like, how do we tell somebody about it? How do we let the FBI know, or whoever know, that somebody's going to come steal this? And they go to the National Archives, and that's where the lady that enters the picture, that's where she comes in, and he tries to tell her essentially about someone's going to steal the Declaration of Independence, and she doesn't believe him. And so they're like going to move on. Now they've decided, like, we're going to have to steal it ourselves because nobody believes us. And as they do all this and they plan all this out, while they're in the process of actually stealing the Declaration of Independence, Ian shows up, and he's going about it a totally different way. So now Ian knows that Ben's alive. Ben has stolen the Declaration of Independence. Through a series of mishaps, he had to use a credit card in the process at the gift shop there. And so now they know who he is. They think they know where he's going. He's found out. Nobody knows about Ian, but Ian and his guys got out of there, and now the FBI's on the case, and it's this whole deal. So Ben has the Declaration, and he's on the run, and now they've got to continue to solve things. The only place that they know to go, where somebody wouldn't immediately look, is his father's house. So they go to his father's house, and through a series of tests on the Declaration, realize that there is a map, or a clue to a map, on the back of the Declaration of Independence. And it is the Silence Do-Good letters. It's a hint, or a Oddendorf cipher that tells them how to use the Silence Do-Good letters to find the next clue. Silence Do-Good letters being some letters that Ben Franklin wrote pretending to be an old widowed woman when he was like 13 to his brother's newspaper. And it's a real thing. It's not something made up for the movie. It's a real thing. He did that, and they exist. But anyway, now they are on to they tie his father up so that the FBI doesn't think he was in on anything. It makes it look like he was being used or whatever. They move on, and they're going to solve the next problem. Anyway, so they go through all this series of stuff to solve the clues and figure out what's going on. Now that they have the declaration, now they just have to find the treasure. Because now it's about keeping Ian from getting the declaration and keeping him from getting the treasure. So it's this kind of Ben and his pals are trying to figure it out while being chased at the same time by Ian and his guys. And through a series of whatever situations and things, they get to a point where Ian and Ben are now working together, basically at gunpoint because Ian is forcing them to, but they find themselves down on Wall Street. They find themselves in an old church. They find themselves going down up underneath all these buildings in downtown New York. Is that where they're at? Yeah. So they end up way up underneath everything, and there's all these major sets that they're on. Everything looks very old. It looks like from a long time ago. They get down to the bottom, and there's nothing there. And so Ian leaves them down there, and because they give him kind of a fake clue that telling that actually it's somewhere else. That they're this is something they saw down there. They said this is a clue, and it's leading you over to this place in Boston. Well, Ian decides to leave them down there at the bottom of this huge mine shaft kind of thing, and he's not going to let them out, and they're stuck now, and he's going to go to Boston and find the treasure, and if they're wrong, he's going to come back and know where they are because they can't get out. Well, once Ian leaves, you realize that they kind of know a little bit more than they were letting on to Ian, and there's a few clues down there. One thing where they're at leads them into this other room, which they think is like the treasure room, and once they get in there, they realize that there's nothing in there anymore. So now they think, we found the treasure room, but someone beat us to it a long time ago, and it has been taken years and years and years ago and moved somewhere else. We don't really know where it is now, and there's no other clues to follow, and so the treasure's gone. And then there's a little twist, and Ben sees something on the wall and realizes, oh, wow, this pipe that I got at the very beginning of the movie perfectly fits in this little hole. And I can put the stem of the pipe in this other hole while I put the rest of the pipe in another little area. And then I can turn this little thing and press this button and, a series of contraptions and open this other door, and it opens up into the actual treasure room. So now the treasure has been found. And they end up finding a escape kind of back hatch stairway out of the whole thing, but there's gobs and gobs and gobs of treasure in this gigantic underground place. They end up getting out. They call the FBI. They kind of make a deal with the FBI on letting him know, hey, we don't really want to go to jail, but FBI says somebody's going to go to jail, and he says, well, I think I can help you out there. They know where Ian, the bad guy, is going to be in Boston, and so they kind of set him up and tell the FBI there and tip him off, and they go and find Ian. Ian gets arrested for all of this stuff and basically goes down for stealing the declaration. And then Ben is credited with finding the treasure, him and his family and Riley. And they get a huge monetary reward that you don't really know the exact amount, but Riley's driving a Ferrari, and so you assume that it's quite a bit. I guess that's the visual way of telling you that they got a bunch of money. Ben got a really nice house that they moved into, and him and his lady that he met at the archives are now together, and everybody seems to be ready to live happily ever after, and the movie's over. So, yeah, clear as mud, as they say. My explanation for the film, or my layout or rundown of the film. But with that down, we're going to jump right into the final verdict, where we put the film to the test across 10 categories, scored on a scale from 1 to 5. And that scale looks like this. 40 to 50 is certified rewatchable. 30 to 40 is leans rewatch but debatable. 20 to 30 is return worthy unless you're feeling nostalgic. And then if it drops down and it's in the 10 to 20 range, it's an absolute return it and maybe rewind it out of pity. We will score it on a scale from 1 to 5. That looks like 1 equaling poor, actively bad, annoying, or distracting. 2 equaling weak, flawed, or inconsistent. 3 is fair, adequate, but nothing special. 4 is good, solid, works well, but not iconic. And then 5 is excellent, outstanding, a strong highlight of the film. And we're going to start with, as always, story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? All right, I've already scored all these, but I can't promise it's not going to change as we go through this. Is it compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? Well, there's things on a rewatch that you have to kind of set certain things aside. That's like suspension of disbelief when you watched a movie because it's a movie. And so you have to add that, you have to allow that to be a thing. This is a movie. And so therefore everything doesn't have to be exactly perfect. I don't have to understand everything perfectly. Everything doesn't have to make absolute sense. Things that generally wouldn't make sense can happen. It's okay, whatever. So, for the most part, I can watch this movie and set most of that stuff aside. Little things like this, for example, this is just a kind of a story setup or a way to have things work, a driver of what they're trying to do and a way to set things up, right? So there's a point when they need to know what her password on the computer is. And so to do so, he has this George Washington's campaign button that he spoke to her about, and he's going to give it to her. But he needs to be able to, when he sneaks in to steal the Declaration, to go to the computer and see where she has pressed buttons. So he gets this stuff that is kind of like glow in the dark, whatever, but you can only see it under a black light. Not glow in the dark, yeah. It's like black light stuff. And he mixes it in. It's like this powder. He mixes it with water. He dips the button in it, and he puts the button in a thing, and it's like gifted to her on the day of that. So she gets the button. She takes the button out, and she has it in her hand. And she's touching it and looking at it and all that. And then you're supposed to understand later on in the film, because she immediately goes after that. They have set up a way with something to do with heat and the Declaration and temperature control and all that. They've made it to where she would have to, directly after that, or somewhere around there, go to the kind of examination room for these documents. And she would have to type in the thing on the computer to the password. And so later on, when he's there to steal the Declaration, he can use that blacklight flashlight and see where her fingers, after touching the button that has the stuff on it, he can see where her fingers touch the thing, and he can tell Riley what letters she used, and they can kind of use a computer thing to quickly give them the potential of what the password is. Yes, that could work, but the assumption that that's going to work perfectly is, how do you know that stuff after drying and her touch, how do you know she's going to touch it and get it on enough on her fingers for it to last like that? Do you know she's going to go direct? It's everything it's one of those things where, which just happens way too often in movies. It's a situation that has to happen perfectly, exactly the way that they wanted it to happen for anything to go the way that they wanted it to go. So, again, I live by railroad tracks, and there's a train coming on here because I'm in the middle of this. We're just letting the train roll. So if you hear the train in the background, I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep talking right through it. But here he comes right by blowing his horn, and there he goes. But yeah, this is a situation where things in movies so often are set up to where they happen exactly as they need to happen, as they're expected to happen by the people in the movie, and nothing ever goes wrong. Sometimes it goes wrong, but that's only because it's been scripted to go wrong. So, I can accept that, yes, this is a possibility, but, the possibility of it all going off without a hitch is also much lower. So, I have to set aside that. So, as I score this and have this whole long talk about the story and plot, I think like the story overall of like the idea that there's all these clues and we're chasing them down and trying to figure all this out, like fine and dandy, that's great. Like the plot, all of it, like I can get and I'm okay with and I'm on board with. It's the little things that I feel like it's the little things that I feel like have to happen for things to go a particular way and just like have to be perfect. That like if I was making a movie, I don't want to write the easy fix into the movie. Well, I need this to happen, so therefore I'll just write that this thing happens to make this happen. Like I feel like I would, if I was writing a movie, I feel like I would go about this differently. Is all I'm saying. And granted, you can only show so much. So you know, if you're not like if you're going to condense it down, you're only going to have so much time. If you're trying to cut your movie down to certain length, then you're going to have to just like have some assumptions and have some things that just all work out the way they're supposed to. I say all that to say, yes, I think like it's a compelling narrative. It's a coherent narrative. It still holds up on a rewatch, but there's stuff in the writing of the movie where I am like, yeah, I wish that you would have done some different, made some different approaches on things so that it wasn't just kind of like one of those everything just happened to work out exactly the way we needed it to work out kind of things, because those situations can be just a little annoying. So, as a watcher of a film, so I gave the story and plot. I'm not even real comfortable about this. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like I wanted to give it to a 4, but because of all the making things happen exactly like you need them to happen in order to have your film, like I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5 because of that. Because I feel like you could have approached it a little bit differently and, I don't know, made it not seem so everything happened just exactly perfectly for us kind of thing. Moving on to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted or forgettable and flat? Well, I think that they are memorable and well acted and not forgettable and flat. I think you have some great character actors in the movie that did just exactly what they needed to do. And I think, like, you know, I think the Nicolas Cage, Ben Gates character is kind of a, you know, became a pretty instant, like, pop culture thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think you had people in the movie that were adequate and did what they needed to do. And then I think that you had people in the movie that made the movie by their interactions, their chemistry together, the way they played their character, the enjoyable nature of watching them play the particular character that they're playing. And this may be too much for some people, the score that I'm fixing to give this. But like I put it at 4.5 because I think it's, I'm not going to put it as some like iconic thing, but I'm also not just going to be like, well, it was just good. I think it was a little better than good. And so I'm putting it kind of in between that. Yeah, there's iconic up here and there's good down here. I'm putting it down. I'm putting the characters and performances in the middle of that. So above good, below iconic, at a 4.5 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value is next. Were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? Pacing and entertainment value is in a solid place where I watch this movie and I'm entertained every time I watch it. I don't think it's like boring or it has those like lulling moments. Really, I think it does a good job of like keeping you going. It's not hard to keep up with, but it moves. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on and it moves, but it's not hard to keep up with. They do a good job of bringing you along. But then there's moments where like it allows you to breathe, and in those breathing moments, it doesn't get boring, and you're not just like, come on, like let's get on to the next thing. Like, no, they like do a good job of making you want to kind of know what you want to know. The focus of those slower moments are still things that keep you kind of like wanting to know more. Like they got you right there. So from pacing and entertainment value perspective, I am giving this also a 4.5 out of 5. And now we will move on to dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic and memorable lines? Do people still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? Yeah, I think there's iconic and memorable lines. I think the iconic line, I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence, is, that's like one of the most memed things in general, especially in the world that we live in today, where everybody's, up in arms over politics all the time. Anytime anything happens, that's a common meme that I see, where somebody has, somebody's unhappy with something in the political realm, and then they'll post like a picture of, Ben Gates in this movie with the caption at the bottom, I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence. It's like, there's nothing left to do. I'm going to have to steal the Declaration of Independence. Anyway, kind of fun stuff. But yeah, so there's iconic lines, memorable lines in the movie. For me, anyway, just that one alone. If there's no more for somebody, what I'm saying is most people will, if you said that, they're going to know what you're talking about. So do people still quote it? Yeah. Even if it's just that quote alone, people still quote it. And people still know what you're talking about. Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? I don't think it's like cringy necessarily dialogue at all. I think it's all right and fine and dandy and natural enough. I don't remember feeling super cringy about any of that. So for dialogue and quotability, I'm also going to give it a 4.5 and say it is above good, but not in that iconic realm. For whatever reason, I always remember at the beginning of the movie where Riley thinks that they're just like, that the guy's just like spitting out words when they're trying to solve something, and he's spitting out words. He thinks he's just saying random stuff, and so he says aardvark. See, I can do it too. If we're just saying random words, that's not that's like some super popular line that other people would be thinking about, but I always that's a part of the line or the movie where somebody says something that always comes to my mind, where he just randomly says aardvark and then makes fun of the guy because he's like, look, if you're just saying random words, anybody can say random words. I'll just start with aardvark. Anyway, dialogue and quotability, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Now, soundtrack and score. Does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? After watching this time around and paying attention, not that I didn't pay attention to it before, but like as I watch these, I think about these categories a lot as I'm watching the movies. And I appreciated the music even more now after I was watching it with the thought of like this podcast in mind. The guy does a really solid job on the soundtrack. And I definitely think it enhances the film, and I don't think it dates it in any way. I love movies that don't just have like the basic kind of like, yes, it does a job, but when it's not there, it's not memorable, but it's there to do its job kind of thing. This has definitely memorable stuff, and it has like multiple movements, multiple themes. Not movement. It has multiple themes. There is the, heavy. There's 3 different themes, basically. You have like the more suspenseful, we're in trouble kind of theme. Then you have, which is more stringy related stuff. That kind of stuff. And then you have the kind of bigger, different section of that is also strings that also, kind of opens up and it's kind of more of a bigger theme that I'm not going to hum here for you. But then you have like the little kind of whimsical piano, like multi-hand high air, whatever piano stuff going on. That well, I feel stupid doing that, but anyway, there's like 3 different themes in this movie, and all of them are great. And every time I watch this movie, which was 2004, I get Pirates of the Caribbean vibes, and I don't know if it's just the way that they chose to use strings in this, that whatever, but really solid score for this movie. It definitely elevates the emotional tone of the film. I don't think it feels out of place at all. It feels perfect for what it is. It's not generic in any way. I would say it leans iconic, to be honest with you. As I'm thinking about this, I'm like, yeah, this is legit. So, I mean, there's parts in this movie where the music, where like Nicolas Cage as Ben will be saying something, kind of like in reverence to the past or whatever, and they will play these themes behind him, or a particular theme behind him, and it moves you for the way that he's moved by history, right? And like you start to get moved because of the way that they're using music as a bed underneath the thing that he is speaking about himself being moved about. I mean, it works really well together. I'm giving this, from soundtrack and score, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5 because I think it is super solid. Moving on to cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish? Regardless of effects budget or genre, do the camera work and effects still impress, or do they look dated or clunky? So visually, this movie is fantastic. Cinematography is super duper solid. They do a really good job of shooting. You know, the little short older bit in the rain with Charles Carroll and all that is great. The attic scene is like, I love the vibe and the feel of that, and the way that it was shot, and the rain and the lightning, and mixing in the fact that it was storming. If I'm correct, maybe I'm totally forgetting, maybe I'm totally mixing this up, but it was storming in like the modern day part of the story where the grandpa's telling young Ben the story and all that. It was storming outside there, raining and storming and lightning and thundering, and then he's telling the story about Charles Carroll, and it is raining and storming and lightning and thundering and all that too. And so like there's this connection between the storytelling, the reality of the environment where the story is being told with the story itself that's being told, and the cut back and forth. They do a good job of like bridging that gap where it almost feels like all one big thing. Which like I think is great. The moving on to like the big outer, icy, snowy stuff. I think all that's shot really well. I think I love the grading of things when they're down in the hull of the ship, or in the inside the ship, where things are graded a little more like blue and cold, and in a particular way. I think it looks really good. But it changes, from inside the ship to outside the ship, like that changes. And I can appreciate that. I think like the movie was shot really well. I think the visuals are fantastic. The set builds are like great. I love them. It makes you feel like you're there. It makes you feel like you're even in the places where they're inside of some of these government buildings and things where they've built a set so that they're, for security purposes, they're not on location at some of these spots when it comes to like the inside of some stuff. But they do a really good job with it. It's really solid. I love the visuals. I think the camera work is really solid. The set builds are fantastic. The only thing that like I watch this and go like, I mean, even it's just really well done. The practical nature of things, the stunts, all of it is like really well done. The only thing that I would say like now shows itself of the time is a little bit of like the when he's like given the explanation of how they're going to break into it, he's talking about the security system and how they store the declaration in a vault and all this kind of stuff and everything that needs to happen, and there's these animations of all that as he's walking you through it, and the animation's kind of like sometimes you see them and then the animation happens around them, and it still looks fine, but I feel like it looks of the time, of the technology of the time, and even the way that Riley was using computer. I don't feel like technologically it feels way behind, but like as you watch the technology that Riley's using to like do all the things that he's doing, that would be a little bit different now. We've like advanced, in 22 years. So like that would be my only thing from the effect of like something looking dated, is just like you can tell from a technological perspective that it's of that era, but it doesn't necessarily make it feel dated. It's just I know somebody would use something a little different now and have a different approach from a technological perspective. But I don't think that like any of the stuff feels clunky or dated. I think there's that one scene where they light the actual real treasure room on fire, where he lights the thing and then the fire lights the whole thing up. I mean, like there's a point where I tried to watch really close. The back of that huge room may, when you're watching it really close, may not look as realistic as you would want it to look. But even then, like that was me looking for stuff. And so, yeah, like there's not a lot to complain about. So for cinematography and visual style, I am giving this a 4 out of 5. Actually, I'm taking that back. I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on to originality and creativity. Does the film feel fresh and inspired, or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? I think the film, when it came out, felt like something new. I mean, like this whole idea of like treasure map and clues and all that, like kind of being spread out through historical documents and things. And so, I mean, like obviously this is very Indiana Jones. The concept of treasure hunting is not new. The concept of like treasure hunting and like historical, archaeological, I mean, like that's part of treasure hunting, right? Is the fact that like you got to kind of sometimes take advantage of history or find out where history connects with what you're trying to do and find. But I feel like this was like a fresh take on that sort of thing. The idea that like it's not just simply we're looking for treasure, but we have to steal the Declaration of Independence, and now the whole entire thing is like kind of built around this document that we have stolen. So we're not just now we're on the run from the government, and we're looking for this thing, and it's because of the Declaration, all of it. Whether you think it's likely that somebody would steal, that's nothing to do with it. The movie is the movie. That's the premise of the movie. That's the thing that I don't really understand is like if you have a problem with the premise of a movie, you have the problem with the premise of the movie. But if you're just gonna watch the movie for the movie, you got to accept that the premise is the premise, and they steal the Declaration of Independence. That's what they're doing. That's what the movie's based around. They're after the treasure. And so like all this idea of the talk of like how unrealistic it all is, and there's no way they would ever be able to, and there's no. Well, like they did. It's a movie and they did. So get over it. Like that's one area I don't get from movie complaints. If it's a completely and totally unrealistic premise that you can't get over, just don't watch the movie. If you're going to watch it knowing what the premise is going in, you don't really have any reason to complain. So how you like that? But so like, yes, I feel like it was a fresh take on, the treasure hunt vibe part of things, the approach, whatever. It it obviously took a lot of things from other stuff, so it's not entirely original, but it was creative in the way that they went about it. It did bring its own unique thing, so it pulled a lot from the kind of stuff that you are familiar with, the Indiana Jones stuff, the all that. I mean, like, even from thinking about, like, this came in 2004. You watched The Mummy. There was a lot of that involved with The Mummy, the trying to figure things out and find things and all that. Just very swashbuckling in nature and adventurous in nature. And so that's nothing new, but they did a good job of making it their own, I think, put it that way. They did a good job of making a movie and not making you feel like, oh, I've seen this so many times before, even though a lot of it was not super duper original in tone or feel or whatever you want to call it. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for originality and creativity. I think they did their own. They did their own thing. It was a cool concept, and that's my score, and I'm sticking to it. Number 8 on the category of 10 here. Theme and message. Is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? I mean, like, no, there's not really a deeper takeaway. Other than, like, there's a lot more to history than what we're told. And sometimes, as he is one who studies history and knows a lot of history and is able to, like, quickly figure things out because of his knowledge of history. I think, like, there's a lesson there for us to, dive a little deeper when it comes to history stuff. I think there's a lot more there to learn and know that, like, you're not taught in school. That, and I don't mean that as a negative thing of, like, there's so much bad that they don't tell you. I don't mean that kind of stuff. Like, don't even get me started, to be honest with you. These are conversations that I love to have. I'm not going to have it right here on a podcast, but from a historical perspective, I love the era that this movie is, like, calling back to, and I have a lot to say about it and the people and the just a whole lot of it. And I don't even mean in a negative way. I just mean in a like, what I'm saying is, like, I don't have negative things necessarily to say about any of them. I have a desire to have a deeper understanding of the people of that era and the way they were living and the whatever you want to call it, the resolve that they had and the things that they sacrificed and like who they were as people and how they changed the entire world, because had it not been for, like, everything that they did, the world that we live in would be a completely different place now, and probably for the worse. So I think, like, from a theme and message perspective, I think there's a message in this about opening yourself up to understanding history more, to appreciating history more, to appreciate, this specifically kind of talks about the Declaration and the message behind the Declaration and the reason for it, and to again, not going to get into all that, but I think, like, yes, I think there's some good messaging in that, even though I don't think it's, like, an intentional thing. It's just part of the part of the movie, part of the characters being the characters. I don't think it's necessarily trying to say anything. But I do think that those ideas resonate today. I'm just saying, in the same way, don't Don't tear down a fence till you know why it was there in the first place, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that kind of deal, which I feel like a lot of people want to do, which is a whole other thing. Moving on to, let's see, my theme and message, I gave this, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5 here. And moving on to cringe factor. Are there any jokes, effects, or moments that haven't aged well or were always bad, moments that make you wince now? Campy, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes that aren't funny, etc. Really, no. I mean, the only cringy side of this, again, like, it's not a cringe. It's not like I watch it and it harkens back or like throws back to what I said about story and plot stuff. I mean, it's the little things of like everything happening it perfectly exactly the way that we need it to happen kind of stuff. And so that's like the only area of cringe is like more of a writing, a thing in the writing of the movie that I feel like you could write certain things a little bit better and remove that cringe completely and totally. But there's not a whole lot to talk about from the perspective of cringe factor. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5, and I would give it probably a 5 out of 5 if it wasn't for the silliness of like even him walking into that gala, right? The whatever the party that he goes to, where the Preservation Society gala thing, and that's the night and the party and the when they're going to use all or the event that they're going to use to give them the ability to do what they need to do to steal the Declaration. And he gets on like Photoshop or something and just like drags a photo of himself over to this, tag that's a pass to get in. And it's like for a plumber or something. So he walks in with a tux or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's just a regular suit or a tux, but he walks in, with his suit thing underneath a pair of like plumber overalls, and it's like, hey, I'm here, look, here's my badge, and I'm the plumber. And I just don't think that you're going to call in a plumber in the evening at this major kind of black tie, red dress gala thingy. That's another thing that like doesn't make sense to me. And then another thing that I thought, well, I watched the movie, and it's things like that where I'm like, hey, you could do this in a different way. You could brainstorm a little on a different way of getting yourself in, and a different way of going about this whole thing that doesn't come across as just like, you just have to accept that people are total idiots and accept that like everything happens exactly the way that it needs to happen. So that's where the cringe comes in for me. That's what pulled it down from a 5 to a 4. 4 out of 5 for cringe factor. Nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless, or has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic? And would you honestly watch it again? Does it hold up to your memory of it? Yes. I quite enjoy this movie. Does it still matter today? It mattered enough that they made a spin-off kind of TV show thing. It's a pop culture thing now. It's like it's in there. So like, does it matter? I don't think it's like one of those like, all-time great iconic films that everybody's going to forever always know about, and anybody that you ever talk to knows all about it. Like, I don't know that it's not on that level. It's just not. So like, I can't say that it matters today in some reason like that. Is it timeless? I think it's timeless. I do think this is a timeless movie. Because especially as long as history is history, like as long as American history is American history, and we have these documents and we understand these documents, and we understand history. History's not leaving. It's not going away. It's not like it's, we used to have that history and we don't anymore. It's there. So there's that. And the fact that like this movie was shot really well. They used really good practicals. They did really good stunts. They didn't lean too heavy into super CG anything. Allows this to hold up. And so like, I think it is a timeless film in that it will not ever be a movie that like can't be enjoyed because it looks dated or it People watch it years down the line, and it's like some people watch old movies and they go, that looks older, it feels older, it has old vibes, and I just don't like it because it doesn't feel modern. This is not one of those movies that I think is ever going to not feel modern. So it's timeless in that aspect, but not timeless in it's not going to be oh, that's a timeless classic that everybody loves. It's not going to be that. That's not. So I wouldn't qualify it as that. Definitely hasn't aged poorly. Does a rewatch ruin the magic? No. Would you honestly watch it again? Yes. So, from a nostalgia and rewatchability perspective, I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5 for me because that's where I like it. All right, so let's go back through these. Story and plot, 3.5 out of 5. Characters and performances, 4.5 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value, 4.5 out of 5. Dialogue and quotability, 4.5 out of 5. Soundtracks and score, 4.5 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style, 4.5 out of 5. Originality and creativity, 4.5 out of 5. Theme and message, 3.5 out of 5. Cringe factor, 4 out of 5. Nostalgia and rewatchability, 4.5 out of 5. Now, let's tally these dudes up real fast. All right, this thing ends up at a 42.5 out of 50, meaning it is certified rewatchable. That is my score, my subjective score. Yours doesn't have to be that. You can hate this if you want to, this movie, and you can love it more than I do if you want to, which is going to be hard to do. But this one falls at a certified rewatchable status, and I'm glad. Now, if you would like to have anything to say, let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know your score. If you have any desire to score this along with me, if you're on YouTube, you can do that in the comments below. If you are on any of the podcast audio platforms, you can hop on over to Instagram if you have it, to rewatch or return on there and comment on the post related to this. Any follow, any subscription, any sharing of any of this stuff is super helpful, just because it is. That's how the internet works. That's how the world works. That's what brings new people around. And with that down, I will see you next week.